happening. Just wanted to let you know. And the live stream, when it begins, you will get a notification on your top left corner of the screen. And I will be sharing the live stream link on the chat window for all of you. In case you would like to share the same on your personal or uh, uh, organizational pages on Facebook, Twitter, any of these places. So once that starts, I'll just send that over to you. And
thank you so much. I would love to share it. Just I'm using my mobile phone to do the Zoom as well.
I will tag you in a watch party on your account, and I will also tag the International Chandramouli Trust, your page on Facebook. So then you could just accept the request there, and I think on your account it will just on your personal account it will feature anyway. For your account, the other account, the Facebook page, you'll have to
put
share.
It on Yoga Mission.
Yeah, on our page anyway. The entire thing will be live streamed on the Dias page, so there it will definitely be there. So I'm just setting it up, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. And thank you so much for being a part of it, all of you.
Thank you, Keshav. So we'll be going live in, I think, in the next 3 minutes. And Claudia, is Dr. Pant also joining us today?
Yeah, I'm just talking to them. João Paulo. Oi, João Paulo, bom dia.
Nick Sergio has also joined us.
A gente já está na sala, tá? Pode ficar. Obrigada aqui.
Also request those who are not talking in Zoom to keep their mics on mute. A few things that definitely will be repeated by the moderators. So Claudia, now we're going live. In case you want everyone to say hi on your phone call, then you can have yourself unmuted. Otherwise, my request will be on your phone calls, you can mute here.
Hello there.
Hello, Sergio. Can you hear us?
Sérgio, bem-vindo.
Yeah.
Welcome, Sérgio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect. Good. Hi, Claudia.
Joao is also joining us.
João Paulo, bem-vindo. Welcome, João Paulo. Are you listening, João Paulo? Tá me ouvindo, João Paulo?
Now the audio is connected.
Yeah.
A very good afternoon from India to everyone across the world. I'm Devesh Gupta, and as the Global Director for the Dialogues at the Dias Global Voices program, I welcome you all to the third Elements Dialogue. And the theme today is Water and Us. We have previously hosted 2 dialogues within the Global Elements Dialogue, one of them being on People and Us, where we discussed upon the impermanence of nature, interconnectedness of everything, and the connection of the basic elements of nature with the entire cosmos, creation, and human life. The second dialogue was focused around land and us, where land element was discussed as one of the Mahabhutas, and the role of trees, forests, issues concerned with the land in the society, community, and different forms of civilizations, and in the absolute reality of nature. This brings us to today's theme, which is water and us. And I would further like to introduce you to Ms. Divya Prabhaji, who will be also the co-moderator for today. And I would like to hand the floor over to her.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Pranam, and welcome to all of you to Water and Us, this beautiful global elements dialogues we have a beautifully curated program for you today. And we're going to be starting off with a video, which is a performance of a carousel ritual dance. It's an animation from a film documentary trailer called Pelas Aguas de Rio de Lete, which you can understand to be something to be like the waters of the Milk River. So this shows all the living beings, how creation comes to life. And it's founded from an indigenous myth about the sacred serpent, Cobra Canoa, in her journey that comes from the ocean to the Amazon river mouth, going up through the Negro River until Yawarete Falls, where humans and all the creation emerge into life. So I hope you enjoy this beautiful video.
To bahwa ke nipi pemusi wipe nipi nikana memasa malika naiti akan yang wakopi emeko dare guti ako nekeni emekoli ome vino masa nira sama nipi muy pumhati rospere open kondistala darepi topu pamuni masa bahwa apa pamuni masa wala sama ninga muy kolinya que tu hacer o kunya kastiri kumuno kastiri pa tuharo kastiri yuiro kastiri uharo kastiri munono vero pamuni yukisu bone ni petina pamuni masane mi sapi mi sandustipi pamuni yukisu mena ati pamani kisima dia pati puatipa ukuran ho pamuni yukisu pairi masumoto.
Thank you so much, Devesh, for sharing that beautiful video. And it's not just telling this beautiful story of how life on Earth came about, but it's done in such a beautiful way. And Claudia, who the makers of that video, have done a real service to us all, because it's so important to present things in an accessible way for people in this modern world, because people's attention span is so short compared to the attention spans of people just 50 years ago, even if we look. I just want to say a little bit about water before we move on to our eminent next speaker, who will be João Paulo Lima Barreto. But before we come to him, I just want to talk about the essence of water in life, because if we look at each of our individual lives, we see that even though we may be able for many days to go without water, without food, we cannot go without water, and we cannot go without breath. The most important thing is breath, and the second most important thing to human life is water. Without the existence of water, we cannot survive as a race. not even past a few days. Only yogis can really go beyond that, because otherwise there is permanent and lasting damage to our systems. That's on the physical front. And if we look on the spiritual front, we see that the Vedas, through the Upanishads, have given us water-based analogies since the beginning of time to describe the very existence of life. They tell us that life itself is like a river, where you go from the left bank to the right bank, the left bank being birth and the right being death. And that which flows between that birth and death is just the river of life. In other examples, we see that ocean of consciousness described as the analogy for the entire existence, and where a water drop, which represents ourselves, just if it slightly touches the surface of the ocean, it becomes absorbed into the ocean. In the same way we see in the Gita that they simply describe that that all of the beings, like rivers, flow into that ocean of consciousness, and coming into the ocean, they dissolve so that they become indistinguishable. And the last example is that we as individuals are like waves on the ocean, but we are part and parcel of that ocean. We cannot be separated from that universal consciousness of the ocean. So we see that water is not just a physically important thing to us, but also is an important spiritual, and also a very important spiritual concept to describe the existence of us. And if we look at Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya describes the 5 elements, which is the theme for these global elements dialogues that we are doing at the moment. And in Sankhya philosophy, it gives us the 5 elements of earth, water, fire, wind, air, and space, ether. Now, each one of these elements, Sankhya tells us, is not independent of the others. Each element, so if we look at earth, it's 50% earth, 12.5% water, 12.5% fire, 12.5% wind, and 12.5% ether. And in the same, water is 50% water, 12.5% earth, 12.5% fire, 12.5% wind, and 12.5% ether. And the very interesting thing about each of these individual elements is that you cannot change its inherent nature. For example, the very nature of water is coldness. But if you put fire near it, it takes on the quality of fire. And that is how, how very magical all of these elements coming together that are part and parcel of each one. And you cannot totally separate one element from another, and they affect each one of them. And then when we look at the actual existence that we live in from day to day, for those of you who are outside India, in India is still very much an indigenous culture. That indigenous culture runs through ordinary people's lives as a way of life. That's why it's called Bharatiya Sanskriti. And the rivers have a very important, sacred role in every human's life in India. Birth and death is interconnected with the rivers. Ganga, the most prolific of all of the rivers in modern times. Before that, we had the Saraswati River, which perhaps due to earthquakes shifted location and became underground. But the biggest and most important river in everybody's lives in India is Ganga. And it's not just called the river Ganga. It's called Mother Ganga. The rivers in India are our mother. They nurture not just the soul, providing food and nourishment for the people of the land, but they nourish our soul. They carry valuable herbs and minerals from the Himalayan mountains through the lowlands of India to all people, from the Himalayas all the way to Calcutta, where it opens out into the Arabian Ocean. But and civilizations are centralized from ancient times across on the banks of the rivers. And if we look at, for example, Varanasi, which is considered the oldest continuous civilization in the world, it sits on the bank of the Mother Ganga. And rivers play a core part of people's lives. Well, when it comes to the leaving of the body, where bodies are taken to places like Haridwar and Varanasi, where they're burnt, where the body goes back into the ash of the earth, and a portion of that ash is offered to the rivers. So the rivers play a very important role in our sacred rituals, our sacred way of living, and are revered as the Divine Mother in India, even today, after so many thousand years of existence. So water is a very, very special part in a sacred way and a physical way of people's lives, not just in India, but around the world. And so very much looking forward to hearing our very eminent speakers today. And I'd just like to introduce my co-moderator here, Devesh Gupta, who also would like to speak a few words. He's on live now. Here we go.
Thank you, Mataji.
Pranam.
Mataji, pranam. I completely believe that water is life-giving, and it is also the essence of life, like you were mentioning. I believe that 3/4 of the Earth's surface today is covered with water, and almost 3/4 of the weight of human body is also covered with water, if we look at it in that way. Maybe it's blood, mucus, urine, saliva, or any fluid. Then Vedas and Upanishads have stated that water element evolves from the rasa and mantra, the taste principle, and which is why the tongue is also its sense organ. And water has been intimately connected to the moon, which is shown by the influence of the lunar cycle on ocean tides. The waxing and waning of the moon also influences our body chemistry, and also which in turns influence our emotions. The water element is also connected to the moon in our breathing cycle. It is believed, and it has also been found out, that lunar energy is evoked when the water element, which is dominant for 16 minutes in each nasal breath cycle of 1 hour, is accompanied by breathing dominated by the left nostril. Now, this left nostril breathing activates the Ida Nadi, which is lunar in nature. So when this Nadi is activated, it stimulates the right hemisphere of the brain, which is related to emotional behavior. So if we look at the Swadhisthana chakra, we see this relationship between water, moon, emotions, and also the psychology. It has been also seen that the sea encroaches somewhere upon the land and land upon the sea. And cities have disappeared over ages because of water. Mountains have risen and fallen in the rhythm of emergence. But rivers swell, they flood up, they dry, they change their course. But they're still there. It's been rivers, like you were mentioning, and lakes and oceans especially, which have drawn settlers from a very long time. Now, be it the gift of the Nile for Egypt, or be it, say, Ganga, the Brahmaputra, where India has been based from ancient civilizations, or China owe its life and sorrows to the great rivers. Now, this Sankhya, which you were talking about, I believe, has been disturbed today because of a lot of usage, or I would say not conscious usage or conversion or transformation of matter, which we humans have in our hands, which has completely resulted into rising water levels at one end and also rising temperature at another end. And this Sankhya, if it is imbalanced, I think it has shown its results in the last 2-3 years. So these are certain things which I believe I have myself thought about, read about when it comes to water and why water. And with that, I would like to give back the floor to you.
Thanks so much, Devesh. That was very, very illuminating. In just a few minutes, you crossed the globe for us, and not just the globe, but the 3 locus as well. It is my great honor to introduce to you João Paulo Lima Barreto now. He is indigenous from the Yepahamsa Tucano people born in São Domingos near São Gabriel de Cachoeira in the Amazon forest. He graduated in philosophy and did a master's and PhD in social anthropology at the graduate program at the Federal University of Amazonas. He's a researcher at the Center for the Study of the Indigenous Amazon, the NEAI, and he's a professor of anthropology, consultant, creator, and co-founder of the Center for Indigenous Medicine in the Amazon. His specific action themes are indigenous culture and knowledge, indigenous school education, indigenous health, training of indigenous leaders, consultancy, and assistance to the indigenous movements. So it's our great honor to invite you, sir, to speak to us today. And please join us and go ahead. Your mic is currently on mute.
Bom dia. Bom dia a todos e a todas. Primeiro, quero agradecer pelo convite a Cláudia e ao Guilherme, né, e a disponibilidade da minha grande amiga Dani, que vai traduzir a minha fala.
Morning to everybody. Here it's still morning in Manaus, in Brazil. So João is thanking to the invitation. It's a great honor for him to say a little bit about his idea, their ideas of water and its importance. And he's thanking everybody.
A água traz para nós, indígena, uma noção de vida.
The water brings the notion
Quando
of
o
life.
Demiurgo, criou o mundo, organizou o mundo, ele fez a partir de 6 elementos.
When you
Luz,
organize the world,
vida, floresta, vida, terra, vida, água, vida, animais, vida e ar, vida.
when Yupa Akon organized the world, he created it with 6 basic elements: light, life, land, life, water, life, animals, life, and Masankatero, human lives.
Depois de ter criado o mundo, né, organizado todos esses elementos, foi o momento de criar o humano. O primeiro humano criado foi o Yepawaka. Yepawaka é união de todos esses elementos. Em outras palavras, digamos, é síntese desses elementos.
After the creation of the world, it was created the first anthropomorphical being, Yepawakan, who is the fusion of all these elements. And according to the indigenous specialist of Rio Negro or Black River, all these elements are combined in our bodies and they equalize the equilibrium of the body.
Então, no corpo humano gravita todos esses elementos. Esses elementos equalizados ou equilibrados que nos faz manter bem.
Yeah, and all these elements are in all, not only the human bodies, but in animals' bodies, yeah, and the forest, and they keep us in a balance.
Então, pegando agora o domínio, aliás, antes, devo dizer que o mundo está organizado é organizado em três grandes espaços: espaço aéreo, espaço terra-floresta e espaço aquático. Daqui eu vou falar um pouco sobre espaço aquático.
It's important to mention that the world is created in three important spaces: the air, and also the aquatic domain and the land. And today, João is going to talk about this aquatic domain or the water.
A água não é concebida somente como um recurso natural, mas também a água é com um componente essencial que constitui a pessoa, ou seja, como elemento para a existência de todos os demais tipos de vida.
The water is not only conceived as a natural resource, it also constitutes the person and all the world. It's an important element. It means the water is an essential element for the existence of all the kinds of life.
Os nossos especialistas têm uma noção muito refinada sobre o tipo de água, que é água branca, água vermelha, água preta, água verde.
The indigenous specialist called Pamuri Massan has a refined idea about all the kinds of water. That is white water, red water, black water, and also the green water.
Essa noção é essa água que circula no corpo.
And these are the waters altogether that circulate in our body.
Então, para o corpo curar, o pajé, ele equaliza essa água no corpo para manter equilibrada sua temperatura.
And so for existing the cure in the body, the shaman needs to keep a balance of all this water and our bodies. So it's necessary to have a control, yes, about its temperature to exist the cure, destination for the body.
Daí a noção importante para nós, indígenas, de entender que o corpo é constituído de água e a água é cura.
That's why it's so important to understand this idea of water, is to understand that all the body is constituted by water and water is the cure.
Portanto, a pessoa que vai curar outras pessoas, ela automaticamente concebe o seu corpo como a água, fonte de cura.
Therefore, the person in charge for curing the others, in this case, the shaman, conceives the water, this important idea of water as cure to cure other people.
Então, isso para nós é muito importante, né? Essa noção de água como cura. Então, o corpo como água e cura outras pessoas.
That's why it's so important for the indigenous, this notion of water and cure, because according to this notion, since you are aware of this notion, and then you can be cured.
Outra noção que temos sobre água é que a água, para nós, foi o caminho que nós escolhemos para sair de os humanos para os humanos. No caso, como foi visto na abertura aqui vídeo.
Another important notion for the indigenous is, it was presented in the trailer, in the movie that we have the opportunity to see before. It is the notion that the water is a way that they use to leave the condition of proto-humans for becoming humans. So according to this idea, the Black River or Rio Negro, is called Opekon. It's the river, a navigation river of human for human features.
Outro ponto importante, né, é que a água é um elemento presente em todos os organismos vivos, por essa razão também é chamado de arcocartiro.
So another important point is that the water is this alive element, and in the indigenous language is called arcocartiro.
Então, uma questão que nos preocupa muito atualmente é essa poluição.
What is very worried nowadays is the pollution of the water. So this is a big issue that indigenous are really worried about nowadays.
Não é somente nos preocupa a poluição do rio, é poluição amplo, todas as dimensões, fumaça, queimada, tudo.
It doesn't mean that the pollution is only from the rivers, but in all its dimensions, the smoke, burning forest. So this is a very worrying situation for the indigenous nowadays.
Porque qualquer alteração da água pode alterar toda a rede de conexão de elementos que constitui o mundo. Pode alterar a terra, os vegetais, as frutas, corpos dos animais.
Because if there is a change in water properties or like in the pollution, so it changes all the connections, the net connections that constitute the elements of the world. So it can change the land, it change the vegetables, the fruits, and the animals' bodies. It means, as a consequence, a global imbalance.
E essa alteração, consequentemente, pode alterar os corpos humanos, desequilibrar os corpos e podem se manifestar como doenças. E, por outro lado, provocar muitas anormalidades às pessoas.
And these changes, as consequence, can change the human bodies, provoke an imbalance, and it can manifestate as diseases for everybody.
Então, é isso que eu posso dizer agora no momento. É muito complexo, mas eu tentei fazer um esforço aqui, resumir, para transmitir uma ideia central da nossa filosofia indígena.
That's all for this moment. Yeah, João said that he tried to make a brief about this complex idea of water for the indigenous people, and he thanks the opportunity and to try to pass this idea for you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for those not only beautiful words of wisdom, but the depth of knowledge that you gave us, talking about the elements keeping us in balance and the magical ancient traditions of shamans using water as a cure. And of course, without Daniele, we could not have understood what our great doctor was sharing with us. So we're very grateful to you for this very clear and very precise translation of our eminent doctor when he was speaking. So very grateful to you for that. Thank you, Daniele.
I thank you the opportunity.
And of course, we very much enjoy your very happy and bright smile too.
Oh, thanks.
So, I mean, if we look around the world, this concept of using water in it, just the water and infusing it with vibrations as a material to cure is an ancient technique which survives to this day, which is something very, very special. So thank you for sharing this ancient wisdom of the Amazon and the indigenous tribes of the Amazon with us. Our second speaker today is Dr. Vasudha Pant, who is an agricultural scientist whose focus has been sustaining the agricultural heritage in the Himalayan belt from where she comes. For many years, she's been associated with several local organizations working for the conservation of biodiversity, local traditional knowledge systems, and their relevance for the sustenance in today's changing conditions. Her experience of lab to farm introduced her into the villages of Uttarakhand. It's an inter as well as intra-crop diversity program with practical utility of research in the hills. She firmly believes that economic development, employment generation, and conservation of biodiversity in this region requires a combination of technical advice from the academicians and practical input from the villagers based on their traditional knowledge. So it's a great honor to introduce you now to Dr. Vasudha Pantji. Suswagatam. Dr. Vasudha Pantji, are you able to hear us?
Hello.
Hello.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. Suswagatam.
My connection is very poor. Internet connection is very poor.
We can turn off our screens to give you more bandwidth. So if I could ask all speakers and participants, if
Yes.
during this we can all turn our screens off to
On,
give her
presentation.
the maximum bandwidth.
Yeah, it is otherwise very poor. It is not working. I'll present my. Yeah. Zoom. I'm sharing my presentation. You can see?
It's visible. It's visible.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I'll start. Today we are all here to speak about water and us. My presentation is on water crisis, what presently we are facing all over the world, and how our traditional knowledge system can be helpful in averting it. I am representing here our organization called Green Hills. Green Hills is I am Vasudha Pant. I am the founder of Green Hills organization, and I'm also the secretary of the organization and principal worker, I can say. We can meet at also greenhillsalmora.org. This is our website. And we are working on basically broad area is environment protection and prosperity through local resources. And keeping this broad issue, we are focusing on nutritional problems being faced by people, environment protection, conservation of traditional knowledge systems, sustainable livelihood generation, and promoting urban and rural cleanliness. As just now Dr. Paolo said, pollution is a big problem for water. Even if water is there, it is all polluted, and for pollution, one aspect is not responsible. There are so many aspects of life which are responsible for pollution of water. Other than this, we are working on, most of you must be knowing, stinging nettle plant, which is widely available in Himalayan area. We are trying to find out how this plant can be used for livelihood generation and for nutritional values. Coming back to water crisis. Water crisis is not the only problem of, I must say, Himalayan region or Uttarakhand or India. It is world over phenomenon. All over the world, we can say soon water problem, even if it is not prevailing today, it is going to come tomorrow because our habits, our life habits have become like this, that only a handful of people are worried about this situation and rest are busy over-exploiting this natural, precious support of our life. Without water, we cannot think of human life. And coming back to Uttarakhand or Himalayan region, water springs, natural water springs, if we say, nearly 50% of the springs of the Indian Himalayan region are drying up. And this is official report. This is not a report of one agency, but this is the official report that Himalayan region is facing a big problem. And water springs are because of the shallow water reservoirs, we should say, in rocky areas. Climatic variation, unhindered runoff, dwindling water retention capacity of soil, change in catchment areas of streams, dwindling quality of existing water sources, disappearance of perennial streams, deforestation, hydropower dams, construction. These are all of the reasons for the overexploitation of the water or for present water crisis. Even IPCC has placed, it has said that we will have to focus on the revival of water springs. Otherwise, this will not remain only the problem of Himalayan areas, but it is going to affect the foothill areas and then the plain areas. On one side, we have natural ponds, we have natural lakes which are being used for the tourism, for the livelihood generation, for the tourism, we can say. But on the other side, you can say on the pictures, this is the result, this is the pollution, this is the man-made pollution of extreme use of plastic by locals, and more than that is by the tourists coming to the areas for their recreation, which is creating problem for the locals, which is creating problem for the life, and which is creating problem for the entire Himalayan region. On the other side, you can see, this is the area. Many of you might have been there. This is the Manikaran area of Himachal Pradesh. It's a beautiful place. But backside, if you see, the Parvati river is all dumped with the plastic waste. And in the middle, you can see that on the other side, Himalayan water is being packaged as pure drinking water. This is the dilemma, you can say. Coming back to the water tradition, our way, our Sanskriti, which was mentioned by Divya Prabhaji a few minutes back. Culture, Indian culture is, I think, one of such culture which has placed a lot of its respect to the water, which is spiritually bound to the water, whether it is from birth to the death. Any ceremony of human existence in Himalayan region, or I can say in Uttarakhand or in Kumaoni culture, is incomplete without the worship of water source. One very beginning thing I can say, in a Sanskrit, some of you might be knowing, Gange cha Yamune cha Godavari Saraswati, Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Brahmaputra Punatuma. This is one such slok which mentions the name of many rivers, many important rivers, you can say, of the pan-Indian region. Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu, Kaveri, Brahmaputra, from east to west to north to south. It covers the name of all, this shloka covers all the names of the rivers which are used, which are pronounced by every person believing in Indian culture in the morning or any worship place. So this is the way we have it sanctified, and we had taken it as a religious matter, these our water resources. And these water resources, coming back to Ganga River, if you see, this is a beautiful picture of Ganga River. We cannot imagine life without Ganga River. It is worshipped like prime god. Ganga, which takes its name from Devprayag, from Bhagirathi to Ganga, it turns Ganga after intermingling with Alaknanda and coming to Haridwar, where you can see by the crowd of people, you can see they are waiting for the evening worship of Ganga River. This shows the culture, but things are changing. These are just remaining a ritual, I must say. This water reverence, paying our respect to water is just a ritual. It has turned into now only into a ritual, not that we are not thinking of, most of us, we are not thinking of the real sanctity of the water, that how precious the water is for us. If we come to Uttarakhand region, I am just taking you from Ganga, I am taking you to Almora region, Kumaon region, and from Kumaon region, I am taking you to the Almora region, Almora district, where I am residing, where I am working. I'll be telling you about the traditional water resources, because Almora, if you ever get a chance to come to Almora, you will come to know that Almora is not a place on the side, on the bank of any river. It is on a ridge where there is no river. But when in history, when king shifted to Almora and made it its capital, then first thing for his survival was water availability, and shallow wells known as nalas and natural springs, dharas, they were made. They were developed by people. And you can see the pictures that these nalas, this is the picture of a nala, and on top of that, this is a shallow well, you can say. Nala is a very shallow well, and on top of that, a structure of temple is built, and it becomes a place of worship. And around that, number of species of indigenous plants, indigenous trees, broadleaf trees, they were made. And to fill these nalas, to get running supply of water in these shallow wells, nalas, chals, khals, these were some simars, dharas, they were made. Chals are the natural depressions where rainwater comes. Khals are the depressions which are made by human. And this is the natural water coming out of the stone, and then stone work is done on its mouth. You see beautiful, exquisite stone artwork. This is Ghunsara Dhara. You can find more than 100, even today. Earlier there were more than 300 nalas in Almora town only. And you can see different types of nalas and dharas of Almora. And now constructions have been, because construction is a problem everywhere, and constructions have been built over these dharas, and nobody knows about these nalas and dharas much now. And once it was said that Almora only had more than 350 nalas. Now it has come to 70 or 80. You can see beautiful pictures. See, these are the nalas, and these are beautiful stone structures over those nalas, water resources. To protect them from any sort of contamination. To protect them from human interference, only a small gate was there to take water. People could take water from those nalas. And now the situation is, see, beautiful stone carving. It is natural and some shape has been given to it. Water was coming out from the rocky areas, you can say, and some stone carving had been done there. And this is called dhara. Now you see, this is another problem. This is inside of a nala, which has dried up. This was the shape of nala, which was built. This is shallow well, and this was the water reservoir for the, and this was the water source for the thousands of people residing in Almora. And now, and these water sources, nalas, these were the taking water from the natural springs, you can say, and now natural water reservoir. And now from that underground water reservoir, from that water source, nala, now we have shifted to pumps, hand pumps. And these hand pumps are drying up again. What we can do in future? Future, if we don't think about the small water springs of Himalayan areas, not only of Almora or not only of Uttarakhand, but pan-Himalayan region, if we don't think about the natural springs, we are heading towards disaster in Himalayan region, because without water, no one can supply. The way forward for avoiding this crisis is, and in Almora, there is a river which flows on the we can say valley, from where water is pumped 200-300 meters high to supply water to the Almora residents. This river Kosi, it is also drying up, and in 2003 or 2004 it was said that Kosi is soon going to dry. There is no water. In 1 month or 2 months, Kosi will dry completely. Then few years back, the administration got activated, because without water, without Kosi River, Almora town, a population of more than 1 lakh cannot survive, because water is coming up from the Kosi River. And administration got activated, and whole effort is being taken up to revive Kosi and its tributary rivers. Like Kosi, and main tributary is Kunjagad. Afforestation practices, indigenous flora is very important for the rejuvenation of river. And indigenous flora is basically broadleaf tree, which gives humus, which gives spongy character to the soil, which absorbs the water, which hinders the runoff of the water, and then the soil enriched with water and the underground rocky reservoir gets saturated of the water, and then this water flows continuously in rivers. So whole lot of effort is going on in the afforestation practices and community, because with waste and sewage disposal, as Mr. Paulo said few minutes back, this lot of effort is being placed on this to stop the pollution of the water. And for this, the most important work for all these practices, for rejuvenation practice of whether it is natural springs or it is river, is community mobilization and participation. This is the work we have taken. We are also participating in the rejuvenation process of the Kosi River through plantation, and we have tied up with the children, with the schools. We distributed them planting saplings. They took care of these saplings for 2 months at least, and then we called them for the plantation, and they planted this forest, and this forest is coming up. This is the another picture of Kosi River area, I must say, because forest fire is a big problem for drying up of the reservoirs, water reservoirs, which we are unable to understand that how something happening on above ground is going to affect the underground system, because most of the rivers in our area are rain fed, they are not snow fed, they are rain fed, and rain fed water runs off if this sort of situation comes. This is the, on one side you can say, is the totally burnt forest, and forest fire is becoming a big problem for the Himalayan forests, as these are, at least in Uttarakhand, most of the forests have been occupied by the pine trees, and these pine needles, they are creating havoc as soon as little bit of summer comes. So we have to shift our forests. There is a need to shift these forests, replace these forests from pine or needle-shaped forests, conifer forests, to the broadleaf forests like oak. And since a lot of emphasis is on revival of the water sources, the most important thing is mapping of springs, implementing revival of springs, capacity building. As I said, nothing can happen without involvement of, without motivation of, without mobilization of, without participation of community. And for that we need to do capacity building. Like I said, people's participation is most important thing. These are the pictures of 1976. Many of you must have heard about the Chipko Andolan. This was the Andolan in 1976 when the deforestation was on large scale, and the women, they got worried about their forest, they got worried about their livelihood, and they just hugged the trees and they stopped the contractor from felling off all these trees. So this was the mobilization, this was the self-created mobilization of women mobilization, you can say, in 1976. And this sort of mobilization we need, this sort of participation we need even today for the revival of our water sources. And I said we need to forest broadleaf trees, whether they are fruit trees, wild fruit trees, or they are the wild plants, woody plants, like kafal. I'm giving you these local names, but if somebody will be interested, then I can share later on the scientific names of all these trees. Broadleaf fruit trees are kafal, mehul, walnut, almond, apple, maple. These are the trees which are must for the forest trees, and other are the oak, khadi, tun, padam, buransh. These are the trees, because once we will plant, we will replace, we will be able to replace the needle-shaped leaves trees, then only we will be able to create humus in the soil, and then only we will be able to rejuvenate our rivers. Without these trees, we won't be able to create water reservoirs, and without these indigenous broadleaf trees, we won't be able to revive our rivers or our natural water springs. So it seems a very simple option to plant broad trees, but it is small, but it is a very big step. If we are able to do it, we will be able to revive the waters in our rivers. We will be able to revive waters in our water springs. We will be able to bring back our water springs, and we will be able to save our humanity in Himalayas. So thank you so much. This is our motive. Keep earth green, prosper with local resources. Thank you so much.
Dr. Panchi, what a beautiful presentation, and so full of information. It was really amazing. It was very special how you talked about the rituals like the Ganga Aarti and Haridwar that you showed us the pictures of, but also the sad reality of the lack of sense of sanctity of the rivers, that connection to the rivers becoming lost in the current generation. And it was fascinating how you showed us the pictures of the temples being built on top of the natural springs. Really beautiful. I mean, because we could see the picture for quite a while, but it wasn't until the end that we realized what it was in full. It's really amazing how the people in Uttarakhand remain so intertwined with the ancient traditions. And I think that people across India know that and respect the people of Uttarakhand for that. I know in the plains, for instance, in Varanasi, people are held in very high regard that come from that part of the world because of the connection to the ancient traditions
Yes.
that are so often lost by people living in the plains. And really shocking that you could tell us that in Armora, I've been up to that height, hearing that just a few years ago that they're pumping water 200 to 300 meters at that height is just, I think that schools across the country should know this, because if that's what you're pumping there, then you're starting to talk kilometers in the plains to bring up water. And there's no doubt that there is a water crisis looming. It started, we saw last year, a couple of years ago in Bangalore, we saw 10 or so years ago in Jaipur. Delhi, it's a constant battle to have water. But to know that that is already started in the Himalayas is actually scary. I have no other word for it. And seeing the original tree huggers of 1976 is inspiring. The original activists of the world in terms of tree hugging, and I hope that you are able to inspire enough young people who are the only people who really can bring about change, because the consumerism, the level of consumerism, the lack of consciousness with respect to pollution of tourists is a worldwide issue, and people tend to not realize how even just their little part, when you add it all up together, is a choking problem for the rivers. So thank you so much for that, and I really hope that we hear more from you at other programs. I know you've got a lot to share.
Yeah.
Our second video today is a message from Paul Clark, who is an activist. He's an environmental educator in the Amarinda Malkias Foundation. And for the last 26 years, he's had this school in the middle of the jungle, teaching villagers, children and youth at the banks of the river of the Amazon, in the rainforest. And yet, Paul realizes and says that he's always learning from them. In particular, in the last 17 years, he's been involved in saving 4 different species of endangered freshwater turtles on Branco Huapera River, which is in a extravist reservation. His activism has contributed to the creation of this reserve. And whilst he may be Scottish by birth, my heart is Caboclo, which means one who lives inside the forest. So I hope that you enjoyed this beautifully curated video.
My name is Paul Clark. I'm Scottish. Until collaborating with the Almarinda Malaquias Foundation this year, I spent the last 26 years as a primary school teacher on the Rio Jaupari, a remote tributary of the Rio Negro, some 400 kilometers upriver from Manaus, the state capital of Amazonas. Both my children were born there. The Rio Negro Basin is unequaled in its biodiversity, and in planetary terms is probably the greatest celebration of life the planet has ever known. The huge areas of seasonally flooded forest are unique on Earth, nature's combined response to terrestrial and aquatic life. A botanical study of this forest, which surrounded our school on the Jaupari, identified more than 184 species of more than 25 meters in height in a single hectare, an area of 100 meters by 100 meters. I use the past tense because in 2016, this forest was destroyed by fire, lit of course by human hand. The diminishing number of native Amazonian peoples are living proof that humanity and nature can flourish together. Today, however, the majority of the inhabitants of the forest are called ribeirinhos, which means dwellers of the riverbank, or caboclos, meaning people of the forest. They are an ethnic mix of indigenous, Portuguese and African blood. They are our students and pupils, and they and their fathers are the victims and prime practitioners of the artificial and worldwide divorce between humanity and the natural world. Over the last 20 years, they've been taught that trees, tapirs, turtles, fish, all living things are worth more dead than alive. We are personal witnesses to the local extinction of many hardwood trees, to the loss of innumerable species of fish, birds and mammals, and have been personally involved in the last 17 years in the struggle to save freshwater turtles from the same fate. This enormous biodiversity is interdependent and thus vulnerable to human intervention. Many of the trees which have disappeared through selective logging and fire provided essential seasonal fruit and seeds for fish, birds, mammals and reptiles. An adult jaguar or tapir require 100 square kilometers of healthy forest for their survival. The extinction of any species causes a chain reaction which cannot be measured. The climate crisis exasperates everything. Record levels of flooding in the high water season, disastrous droughts in the dry season. We are destroying the most astonishing environment in the world without comprehension or care for consequence. We desperately need investment in basic education. We need research before we lose the possibility forever. And above all, we need to reacquire what was once our instinctive understanding that we are a part of the natural world, and without it, we will not survive.
I think the last comment says it all, that man has to reach this point of understanding where we are part and parcel of the natural world. Our physical existence in itself is part and parcel of nature. And at the end of the day, we all consist of electrons, protons, and neutrons, spurred and with the impetus of kinetic energy. There's nothing different in us from nature except for our sentient existence. And we, having the power of discrimination, having divorced ourselves from the natural world, is really quite extraordinary, because we have the faculty to have the understanding, and yet we have the least understanding in terms of the way the majority is treating the natural world. So there was a very, very beautiful video from Paul Clark, or rather I should say very clearly, Caboclo. Our third speaker today is Dr. Sanjeev Mohapatra. He has a PhD degree in environmental science from the engineering department in Bombay, with his postdoc from the National University of Singapore. His research interest broadly covers the monitoring of emerging contaminants such as pharmaceuticals and personal care products. And he's won several international and local awards for his research work over the last couple of years, and has many publications in peer-reviewed journals, book chapters, and refereed conferences to his credit. So I would like to introduce Dr. Sanjeev Mohapatraji. Pranam.
Yeah, thank you, Divya Prabha, for the warm welcome. So I would like to share my screen for the presentation that I prepared for this occasion. Yeah, so today I'll be talking about contaminants of emerging concern in water environment. So basically, with the advancement of medical sciences and industrial evolution, the consumption of specific several synthetic compounds such as pharmaceuticals, personal care products, hormones, artificial sweeteners, personal care products, pesticides, biocides, cleaning agents, solvents, chemicals has been rapidly increased. So basically, these compounds are collectively called as micropollutants because they are found at a very low concentration in the water as well as in different components of the environment. So basically, when we tell about micropollutants, it can be classified into legacy contaminants as well as emerging contaminants. So basically, for the legacy contaminants, for them, the toxic effect has already been established, whereas emerging contaminants, which are commonly present in water environment, are currently unregulated, and they have a potential threat to the environment as well as human health and safety. So basically, what are the source of these compounds? What are the source of these emerging contaminants? So, as I said before, we can categorize them into pharmaceutical, hormones, personal care products, pesticides, industrial chemicals, surfactants, heavy metal, nanomaterials. So basically, when we talk about pharmaceuticals, so either it is antibiotics, then beta blockers, then painkillers. So they all come under the categories of pharmaceuticals, and these are the most common source is the household discharge, hospital effluent, animal farming, aquaculture facility, as well as illegal discharges from different pharmaceutical industries. Similarly, when it comes to the hormones, so those are being excreted mostly from the animal farming as well as from the household discharges. So basically, for the personal care products are nothing but the fragrances, sweeteners, the insect repellents, which we are commonly using in our household activities for cleaning, washing, bathing, as well as spraying. So all these contaminants all these are produced by us, and ultimately it goes to the environment, and nothing but it gives rise to anthropogenic pollution. Similarly, we have pesticides, which is widely used in case of agriculture and different farming sector, as well as in the gardens, as well as the lawns. Similarly, there are different industrial products such as flame retardants, plasticizers. Similarly, there are surfactant, heavy metals, and nanomaterials. So all these pollutants comes under the category of emerging contaminants because those contaminants were never identified or highlighted previously, and now in last 10 to 20 years, they are being commonly found in a large quantity, including in the river Ganga of India, in a concentration ranging from microgram per liter to nanogram per liter. So I'll give you a very small example, like how the contaminants from a diseased person enters to our drinking water. So basically, the medicine that we consume, it can be through the human drugs or maybe veterinary drugs. So both the medicine undergoes excretion because when we take any medicine, 100% absorption doesn't take place. So up to 90% get excreted, and it goes to the sewage, which is nothing but a wastewater. Then finally it enters to the sewage treatment plant. So incomplete removal at the sewage treatment plant give rise to the treatment plant result this particular contaminants into surface water. Then finally it enters to the drinking water. Similarly, in this particular pathway, excretion followed by liquid manure, then to soil, then groundwater, then drinking water. So basically, both surface water and groundwater are being commonly used as a drinking water sources. So as you can see from this particular cycle, from a patient, once he consumes the drug, how it enters into the drinking water system. So basically, a healthy person who doesn't have any diseases, he may consume this drinking water, which is already contaminated with pharmaceuticals as well as antibiotics. So although he assumes that I'm taking drinking water, which is safe, but at the same time, it is already being contaminated with antibiotics. So basically, at some point in time, if he falls sick, the dose of antibiotics which is required for him won't work for him, because the body has already developed resistance to the certain diseases. So in the next time, he has to take additional higher dose of contaminants. Not just the drinking water, there are other sources such as meat consumption as well as dairy consumption. They also contribute to antibiotic resistance in the body. So this is the conceptual diagram illustrating a central collection as well as wastewater treatment plant. So as you can see here, from an industry as well as for household facilities, wastewater is collected and it goes to this wastewater treatment plant. So basically, at a wastewater treatment plant or a sewage treatment plant, they have different stages of treatment. So, but this treatment plant were designed long before, and at that point of time, these contaminants were not identified. So as a result of which, these particular plants are not sufficient or not capable, are incapable of treating those contaminants to a larger extent, as a result of which we can get those contaminants in our water resources. At the same time, if we are using recycled water for agricultural purpose, then we also come across these contaminants in our food chain. So yeah. So now, this is a study conducted in into ASEAN, in the ASEAN countries. So basically, when the samples were collected and they were analyzed, so what we found, it is mostly caffeine, which is commonly used. I mean, these are all were found in the wastewater, and ultimately they are also found in the water environment. So the caffeine, which is commonly used in the caffeinated drinks or when we take coffee, so this also comes into the environment, and which is caffeine is categorized as a psychoactive drug. Similarly, we also find out azithromycin, which is antibiotics again. In the another year, we also find out acetaminophen, which is nothing but the paracetamol, which is commonly used for the as a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So the concentration at which these pharmaceuticals are detected, they may produce some adverse effect on various aquatic organisms. So once the contaminants enter into the aquatic environment, it has to go through several processes, physiochemical processes, suppose dilution. Like any contaminant that goes to the surface water, it undergoes a dilution process. But we have already exploited our water resources to to the maximum extent. The dilution doesn't seems to have any effect these days, because it's already saturated with many contaminants. Similarly, some of these contaminants are persistent, they are resistant to degradation, and some of them are water soluble in nature. And photodegradation, like in the presence of solar light, hardly these contaminants removed in the surface water. So all these failure of all these physiochemical processes lead to higher concentration of these contaminants in the surface water. So, so what is the concentration? At what concentration range these contaminants are these contaminants are going to be toxic to the aquatic organism. So for a comparison point of view, I'm here presenting a species sensitivity distribution. So basically in this particular graph, as you can see here, the curve, the S curve. So over the curve, we have located algae, fishes, planktons. So these are the various aquatic organisms which are already present, and to what percentage they will be affected when at what concentration. For example, suppose at this particular concentration of 0.0, okay, suppose at a concentration of 1. So if you draw a straight line, so the organism present this side, they are going to be affected compared to organism this side. So now this particular graph corresponds to diclofenac, which is also an NSAID, and this particular graph corresponding to 17-ethanol estradiol, which is also of natural origin, as well as is being fed artificially to women. So if you compare these two graphs, so in this particular concentration range from 1 to 1000 microgram per liter, it is very much evident that it is able to produce various adverse effects in the aquatic organism. But when it comes to diclofenac, so the concentration, when it goes beyond 1000, then it will affect many organisms. So basically, the type of pollutants present in the wastewater, as present in the surface water or the river water, is going to affect the native organism present in that particular water bodies, and which is very much specific to the compound. So, so with that, I would conclude my presentation by giving highlights on the antimicrobial resistance. So as I was saying before, with the advancement in manufacturing technique in the field of biomedicines, mainly antibiotics are produced synthetically on a large scale to treat various kinds of infection, leading to the so-called antibiotic era. So when we use antibiotics, some bacteria die, but resistant bacteria can survive and even multiply to a maximum extent. So basically, the overuse of antibiotics makes resistance bacteria more common, and the more we use antibiotics, the more chances bacteria have to become resistant to them. So, from a past to the present, like if we compare the time scale from 20 years before and 20 years now, so basically we are entering into an era of antibiotics resistance, where the kind of disease and kind of challenges that we are going to face, probably at some point in time, we don't have a solution for that. So it is very much essential for everyone to follow a healthy lifestyle, and also very much important to safeguard the natural environment. So with this, I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev Mohapatraji. It's fascinating to see how the resistance to medicines is not coming just from individual overuse and prescription of medicines, which until you spoke today, I had thought was one of the principal issues for the problem that a lot of people are no longer able to be cured of various diseases, but actually it's due to the pollution of medicines entering the water supply that is also severely affecting people's ability to respond to urgent medication. I think that's a very important point that you've made with your presentation. Of course, it's always important. Prevention is better than cure. So maintaining a healthy lifestyle is, of course, very, very important so that we can reduce the consumption of medications in the world, which would then also helpfully reduce the amount of medication entering the water supply. I don't know how many of you saw, but a couple of months ago we saw that in Paris they were detecting very high levels of COVID in the wastewater supply in Paris, France, which also was a very serious issue in terms of contamination or containment of coronavirus in France. I just want to pass on a very sincere and heartfelt message from our first speaker, Dr. João Pauloji, who has, during this program, overcome with emotion in seeing how similar the philosophy of the indigenous people of India, or rather I should say Bharat, and the indigenous people of Brazil. He wants us to know that he's very grateful for this opportunity to receive the knowledge on behalf of the Indians of Brazil. And we are very grateful also to Claudia G, not only for passing us this message, but also for their conception of this mission, Brazil, India, which purpose is particularly this, to bring the indigenous people of Brazil and India together, because we see the closeness of these two cultures, which are intertwined with the original source of knowledge. So thank you very much, Dr. Pauloji, for your words of wisdom, but also your heartfelt and sincere message to the speakers today. Our final speaker today is Sergio Pamplona. He's an ecological architect and permaculturist from Brasilia in Brazil. He plants water itself through a sustainable water management. Since 1998, he's been living on a small farm, which is an eco-villa called Sítio Nos na Teia, which is a 1 hectare property in the outskirts of the capital, Brasilia. And there, as many of you will know, water is a very serious issue. And in fact, one of the main features of this eco-villa is that its only water source is rainwater harvesting. It's the first of this kind in Brasilia, which is known to have a very severe 5 months dry season every year. So Sergio Pamplona G is doing something very special where he really makes water from the air. So please tell us your story. We're very excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Thank you. That's a very nice introduction. Thanks. It's an honor to be here with you guys. Can you hear me? Is it clear?
Yes, we can. It's wonderful.
Great. And thank you, Claudia, for the invitation. And well, let's share my screen so I can do a better job here. Let's see. Can you see it? Can you see the globe here? Well, just to this is India, and let's fly all half world around, and this is Brazil. Okay, I live here in the center of Brazil. This is Brasilia in the highlands. We are 1,000 meters above sea level. And this green, very green area at north, this is the Amazon, which is really green and really lush forest. Well, Brazil is a forest country, even though the forest in the central area is called Cerrado. And so the Cerrado is very important because we here are in the water source for many rivers from the south side of the Amazon, like the Xingu River that goes this way and the Tapajós River. So we are here in the highlands where the water comes, where the rainwater is harvested, so the rivers can come about. So let's go on to Brasilia. And this tiny red spot is Sítio Nos na Teia. You said it very nicely. And you see it's all green around us. We are in a green island. And if we approach a little more and change the time of the picture when it was taken, this is the dry season. It gets really brownish. So we have a lot of rain, but we have it's concentrated during 6 or 7 months, and we have 4 to 6 months of severe drought here. So let's start this presentation here. Let's see if it works. So this is where we are. And this is our very, yeah. Okay, can you see it? This is our house. And so again, this is the downtown Brasilia. We are 15 kilometers away from the center, so we are very close, but in a very green island, remaining surrounded by urban area. And we have this very specific characteristic of having the land that doesn't have any water source. So when I got here 22 years ago, that's what it looked like this. This is a big house we built. The family was big, many children. So we made this crazy thing of building a very big house. And this is the view from the street in 1998 when we built the house. And that was in 2005. We can see some change here. So, and you can see here on the right, a water tank. This was the second water tank we built here. And I'll more on that in a couple of minutes. This is the same view in 2011. And then 2017, and it's beginning to get hard to take the pictures because the forest is taking shape. Now it's 2018. So we planted a lot of trees, and we also let many indigenous plants grow spontaneously. And we covered the soil. I recall the beautiful presentation by Dr. Vasudha. Sorry if I don't get the name right. And we have all these principles of mulching the soil, having it covered to protect it, to have water soaking in the soil. For us, soil and water, they go very intimately along. And we have this here. We made all this planting, but we also made some. This is the aerial view from of the site. In this satellite image, we cannot see the water features that we have here. If you have the plan, you can see the water features. These are excavated channels and basins where we can harvest water, not for us, but for the system, for the groundwater recharging, for the reforestation to come about. And if you see those stripes, those blue stripes here, they are what we call swales, and which are level ditches, trenches that hold water, stop it from running, and let it soak in the ground. So you can see here pictures of this very simple feature. You have just have to work a lot to have them dug. And when the rain comes, the water sits still and soaks in. And that helps all the trees that are planted below it. So it's a way of enhancing soil and enhancing the soil, the retention capacity of soil, as Dr. Vasudha very nicely put it. So going back to the site aerial view, we have other features like the water basins. This is when we rebuilt the dams around our hut, or we call oca, which is an indigenous name for hut. Our big hut here, we have these water retention features, and you can see it in 2013. And this is another water tank from catchment from the roof. And here you see that the vegetation coming about and getting greener and stronger, much of it due to the water harvesting. And I'll show you a little more on this. Here's a view in 2018. Trees are coming. Many of these trees are food producing trees. That's central for us. And you see the difference when we had it in 2012 and how it was in 2018. This is when we did it, 12, sorry. And this is how it looks in 2014. Now, this is it, when it's in the rain season, it gets really full of water. It's not a river. It just, this is all rainwater that gets in and soaks in the ground. You see, there's a small video here, and let's go. Let's see if you can have it. There you go. The thing here about this is, we don't have to have the sound. The thing here is that year by year, this small man-made lake, it's becoming a lake of an ecosystem. Now it's full of frogs, it's full of toads. Every year it's teeming with life during the rain season, and we see how it gets green all year round now. So you see the water, it's murky and it's muddy because when this shot was taken, it had rained a lot 3 days before. So we have two little ponds that communicate. You see, I'm walking and showing the biggest one here, and the small one, which drains the excess water to the smaller one. And when in the dry season, it gets dry, but each year it's taken longer time for it to get dry, and we are always covering the ground. So it's the process of having water again, holding water, is faster, and life really responds to it really fast. I love it when it's full of water, but it's getting beautiful even when it's without water, which is now. We're just starting a rain season right now. So this is one of the features we have, and you guys have some similar works in India. This is Rajendra Singh. He has a very interesting work in the city of Alwar in East Rajasthan. When I went to India in 2015, I didn't have the chance to meet him personally, but I got the opportunity to see some of the work of his work, and it's a lot about restoring the traditional rainwater systems that were there in India. So if you don't know Dr. Rajendra Singh, please contact him. His work is incredible, and it's much closer than I am. So apart from having all these systems to do bring an ecological benefit of planting water by letting it soak in the groundwater, soak in the ground, and planting trees, broadleaf trees all around, we also have the system of harvesting water for our own consumption. So we have now 7 water tanks, all made in ferrocement, which is a technique derived from concrete, which is faster and safer to hold water. And apart from these 7, and this is the one that's below the hut, and it's 25,000 liters. And we have this one, also 25,000 liters. Most of them are attached to roofs, because the roof is our water catchment, because we can have good quality water coming from the roofs. Every end of the dry season, we clean up the roofs and wait anxiously for the rain to come back, and then we fill our tanks. And the big one is the 100,000 liters on top of the hill, which was the one that gave us the self-sufficiency in water. Since we built it in 2015, we no longer have any other water source other than rainwater, harvested rainwater. And even during the 5-month dry season. So it's working for us. And now, apart from having this water, we have to save water ourselves, because otherwise we have to build many more tanks, which are expensive, of course. So a thing we do is, oh, this is the tanks that are planned, the green ones. As we build new houses in the small property, we're gonna have these new tanks built along with the houses, so we can still be self-sufficient. And still we have very simple biological treatment systems. The first ones we had were the ones that we got the gray water to infiltrate in the ground and to produce and to irrigate plants such as bananas. But now we took a step further. So we start to plan a way to reuse this rainwater, the gray water, the already used water. So this is a very simple system of plants. Was built three years ago, and that's three stages. Later we have a fourth stage in the system, and now this is how it looks today. The plants are these plants are doing the filtrage, and they are having the water with very good quality in the third tank, and even better in the fourth tank. I'll show you guys here. On the left, you see a little video. You see the little fish, a lot of fish in the water. Let's see, this is the water quality in the fourth tank. It's coming. You can see, I pump up the water for this fish plants and the fish tank, and then the water comes back gravity fed to the first tank of the system, and it recirculates and it gets a real good quality. But now we're giving a new step further, which is how can we enhance the quality of the water even more? And we came across these beautiful things that are called flow forms, which are sculptures that enhance the energetic and life-supporting quality of water, such as this one. This is a flow form. This thing, they were designed by Englishman John Wilkes, and they have this very nice way of having the water coming through them and making a figure of 8, a circle, and in which it gets really, I'm gonna show you a video, when it gets really enhanced. Just a second, just a video so you can see what a flow form is like, looks like when it's really acting. Here, you see how the water moves? This kind of movement, it enhances the quality of water, the figure of 8, the oscillating and the rhythm that it brings about. So that's we haven't built yet. I'm having a course on designing them so I can build my own flow forms. You see how the water goes? And so apart from planting water, we are now enhancing its quality so we can have, there you go. So we can have really nice water and you can reuse it many times. That's our goal here. It's like a lab. We are working as a laboratory of our own lives. So just to finish it, we have those many types of flow forms that we can, many sizes and many uses. I'm not gonna explain all that, but it's very nice to research about, do some research about this subject. Let's see. It can be asymmetrical, it can be in a row, it can be all by itself, and that's it. I don't want to take some longer time. So thanks for the opportunity. That's our work.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. I mean, around the world, many people know about rainwater collection on the roof for household needs. But you've taken it as far as I think that it can possibly go. You've taken not just your household needs, but taking what very clearly was an arid desert-like looking type soil, and transforming it step by step to a beautiful forest, which is magical. I mean, you're the living proof. You've got the living proof in front of you that this works. So if we can find more people like you to do this around the world, we can surely bring the pranic force of nature back into these dry, arid, lacking in water deserts that are springing up around, not just across India, but across the world. And those flow forms, enhancing the quality of the water with that figure of 8 that looks like a lot of potential there. We look forward to seeing what happens in the next 5 years from you. Thank you so much for that. And also thank you for the contact of Dr. Rajendra Singh in Alwar. I think we'll all be looking in to see what he's doing. It brings me to the conclusion of today's Water Element Dialogue. We have been really blessed with some fantastic speakers. Of course, Claudia and Devesh and Keshav, always an amazing team, bringing people from across the globe in Brazil and India to inspire not just ourselves, but also the younger generations. And I hope that the voices spread further and further to inspire young people into action. We started off with João Paulo Lima Barreto-ji from the indigenous Amazon, sharing the water cures of the shaman and the importance of water in their culture. And then we moved across the globe to Dr. Vasudha Pantji, who is so deeply intertwined with the culture and the nature of Uttarakhand, which is famous for its deep connection, not just on a physical level, but the sacred and the sanctity of the water, of the nature, of the Himalayas. We then got to see Paul Clark's video where he talked about the divorce of people from nature and the importance for ourselves to reintegrate with nature with which we are part and parcel of. We're not separate. And then moving on to Dr. Sanjeev Mohapatraji, who showed us the effect of the modern day pollutants that we often are not conscious of, that are affecting not only our present, but increasingly going to affect our future. And finally, we had the very beautiful presentation from Sergio Pamplona-ji, who's really living the life of water regeneration, water preservation, water innovation. And I think that that is the perfect speaker that we could have finished with today to inspire us all. I think it's very important for us all to remember that we are animate beings. We have an intellect, an ego, a mind, and then the 5 elements of nature. And it's very easy to bring that I am into I amness. And that I amness is where the existence of ourselves becomes tied and misguided by the objects of the senses. And it's very important for us to retreat inside, to analyze ourselves, to bring us back to that position of I am, so that we can see from above the existence and the reality of nature, our connection with that nature, the role in that nature, instead of dominating nature for our personal needs, for our personal gain, for our personal satisfaction, which is the real cause of the devastation of deforestation, for the devastation of the water supplies through over-farming, overbuilding, amongst many other different reasons. And so the journey to our real selves is really important if we want to bring things back in balance, because until we are in balance with ourselves, until we know what we really are, we're not able to understand what that nature is that surrounds us, what people are that surround us. And the reality is, in India, there's a very special quote in the Vedas. It says, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The reason I say this is, it says the world is a family, and the Vasudha here means earth, but it doesn't mean just world is a family. A Kutumbakam means like a very, very, very small part. We and our lives are very, very, very small part of this infinite universe. And through the ego, we tend to make our lives and perceive our lives to be a very big part of this universe. And so if we can get back to the reality where we are a very, very small, as an individual, very, very small part of this infinite divine universe, each with a specific role to play with specific skills. And as communities, if we can bring all of those things together, then we can bring harmony first into our lives and then harmony back into the universe, so that we can live peaceful, happy, and meaningful lives. With that, I'm going to hand over to our co-host, and Devesh Gupta ji, who will give his concluding remarks and also let us know what programs we've got coming up after this.
Thank you, Mataji. I would first of all like to thank all the speakers who had come to the program, and would also like to say that, as you were referring to how humans get lost in their own illusions, it's very difficult to give back, and someone can only give back once they have themselves become love, like nature. So people like Sergio or people like Vasudha ma'am who are coming in, and then they are not thinking about what to take from the nature right now. They're trying to build the nature, give back to nature. So to give is becoming nature, and that's, I think, the journey of an entire soul or any life form, that you go from ego to soul eventually, and you start giving back. You take your own position, you recognize your nature of giving, or just finding your place. And this is something which I also learned from rivers. Like it said that you cannot take a dip in the same river twice. So river keeps moving, it keeps flowing without getting attached, and without getting attached to any place. And similarly is the problem of attachment, which I've found within human beings today, that we get so attached to our own desires that what has always been there, what is the true reality, we don't see it because we are lost in what we want. So therefore, I felt like the role of elders, or a role of a tree, role of any elements, we don't recognize it that it exists because it has always been there. It doesn't get angry if you don't take care of it. You know, water is not getting angry really with you. So I felt like if that psychological revolution can come into human beings, where they can become love and they can start loving everything equally, then they themselves know what to do or what not to do, specifically what not to do, because then your needs will not expand so much that you would need so many medicines, so many chemicals, so many cosmetics. So that one change will lead to changes on a physical reality, casual reality, like causal reality or astral reality. And similarly at different elements also, because they themselves will manage. The life form in itself is intelligent. The system is intelligent. If we will destroy the Sankhya, what will happen after some time? It will destroy us, but it will keep going on and on. It will find its balance later in time. So idea is to not destroy that and find our true selves, which I've seen with all the speakers who have come here, who have found that true thing and who are giving back, and also creating the right source of knowledge. Because now once this gets recorded, it becomes a global knowledge which can be passed to different people, because people from different places are coming together and telling what is happening right now in their places. So you really don't have to go back to different cultures, because people have already come from applying that today. So I see this as one of those platforms. Now, Coming to the conclusion of it, we are going to have the next dialogue, which will be based on air and us, and that will be on the 3rd of October. And Krishna Das is the keynote speaker who's coming in. I'm not sure if how many of you know about Krishna Das, but he's a very famous individual and who has been a devotee of Neem Karoli Baba, and who has devoted his life in service by singing now, by bhakti. So he'd be coming on the 3rd, and I'd be sharing the link to the event with you. Just 1 second. So you can go to Facebook, and this is the event. You can register here for participating here. And there we are talking about the air element and how air is the centrality, because air is coming out from space. And from there comes any other element, or formation of any other element is coming through air. And how air is essentially also one element which is always present in the now, the breath, while other elements can be a function of time. You cannot let air become a function of time. Air is beyond time. So to understand the nature of air, and to understand the nature of where all of this fits in, and also the chakras, where we say that the heart chakra is where the air element is found, where the love comes in, and through that comes the understanding and removal of illusion of separateness, which Sanjeev was also talking about, that sometimes we become separate. So I think that breath of all breaths is where the God is, and to know that, we will be meeting on the 3rd. And I thank you all for joining in today, and hope to see you on the 3rd. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Beautifully put.
Thank you so much for everybody joining us.
Thank you, Claudia, as always.
Thank you, Devaji.
Pranam.
Thank you.
See you on the
Very
3rd.
See you on the 3rd. Be in touch.